Hi, welcome to the Space News Leading Women series. I'm Space News correspondent Debra Werner, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Colonel Michelle Idle, Space Systems Command Deputy Commander. Good morning.
Good morning, Deborah. Thank you for this opportunity.
I'm so happy to speak with you. But first, I wanted to understand what the Deputy Commander of SSC is responsible for.
All the things that the commander doesn't want to do. Honestly, as the deputy, my job is primarily the down and in. So it's taking care of the people so that our workforce can actually get after the mission. And one of the things we're really trying to do is advance an expert workforce so that we can field dominant space capabilities. So I know we're going to talk a little bit later about how what SSC actually does and what we get after and how we've changed from what we were before. A lot of what I'm focused on is how do I help everybody do their job? There's also a certain number of areas that I'll go after and try to pre-screen things for the boss, make sure that they're ready for him to make decisions on, advocate for different sectors of our workforce and different programs that we have to higher headquarters or to other agencies across the DoD, just to make sure we're being as collaborative as possible. Taking care of the people is really the biggest piece. That includes facilities as well, and anything else that we need to do to get after the quality of life.
So SSC is only a couple of years old, replacing the Space and Missile Systems Center. What are the opportunities and challenges in establishing this new organization?
Well, it's interesting. If you go back and look at our history, our timing on actually standing up Space Systems Command was both good and a little bit challenging. For many, many years, we were an acquisition center. We were a Space and Missile Systems Center. Our program executive officer was the 3-star that was in charge. Shortly before we stood up Space Systems Command, however, we did a pretty major pivot to how we did business, where we went from having kind of pillared, stovepiped program offices to kind of turning it on the side and working more across what we had: enterprise core, development core, just trying to look across the life cycle. So when we set up Space Systems Command, we went back a little bit to that model that we had before, where we had these program offices, and we had single individuals in charge now of the entire life cycle. But the biggest change was that we moved that program executive officer responsibility down from one person at the 3-star level to, at the time, 5 different PEOs. And so that really gave them that responsibility, again, cradle to grave for their programs. And that was a pretty major shift for our workforce, to actually have that responsibility pushed down. And we also charged them with not just delivering programs, but actually delivering capabilities. So it's a very different mindset, right? In the past, we had GPS, and GPS delivered GPS. Well, we may not be able to bring GPS to the fight, but what else could we do? What other types of position navigation and timing systems can we bring? So instead, what we've done is we've charged the PEOs with looking at how they can deliver capabilities. So they're now having to think a little bit more outside the box of just delivering that program of record. So pretty big mind shift for all of us on that. We've spent a lot of time trying to educate our workforce on why we're doing that. The stand-up of the Space Force almost 5 years ago now really kind of gave us that focus. For the first time, we were able to start talking more about the threats. General Raymond, when he came out and started talking about some of the things that our adversaries were up to up in space. First of all, it was shocking because he was saying things out loud that we didn't used to say out loud. But it really emphasized why we needed a Space Force, and it also emphasized why we need our workforce to deliver these capabilities to the warfighter and to the general public. So there was a lot of opportunity there, again, to rethink how we do business. It's really been a neat opportunity to help the workforce really understand why they do what they do and what they're bringing to the fight.
And so, as you mentioned, there's been a lot more talk about the threat in recent years, and that revolves around this idea of the great powers competition. What is SSC's role in addressing the great power competition?
So when Secretary Kendall first brought up the Great Power Competition last fall and charged the Department of the Air Force with changing how we do business, I think we were pretty well positioned to do so with our new organizational structure. The stand-up of the Space Force and how we organized Space Systems Command when we stood it up, trying to get after the best of breed of what we saw across different acquisition organizations, really kind of gave us a head start. What we were able to do, though, with the Secretary's push is look at how else we can do things faster. Where else can we innovate? Our first commander, General Gutlein, had us looking at exploit, buy, build, because we recognize that we can't keep doing business like we used to, which is to build these single monolithic systems. And instead, we need to take advantage of things we already have fielded, whether it's systems on orbit, our ground systems, it's data we're already gathering. So how do we go after doing more with what we have already delivered? And then secondarily, what can we buy? The commercial industry, I probably don't have to tell you, right, in the last 10 years has just exploded. There are companies doing things we never thought we'd see them do, to include space domain awareness, our ability to deliver data, satellite communications, it's grown immensely. So there's no reason for us as a government organization to reinvent that wheel or to be buying or to be building capabilities that we could buy instead. So we've really had to pivot as well and look at how can we leverage what industry is doing for us? How do we take advantage of those relationships and build those relationships so that we can leverage what they're doing and use our taxpayer dollars to our advantage and get the most out of that. Our new structures really allowed us to kind of flatten that decision making as well. I talked about how we've moved the PEO down from the 3-star down to this lower level. We now have 6 PEOs. We added a 6th on the 1st of October. Very, very timely also with the Secretary's Great Power Competition with the Operational Test and Training Infrastructure PEO that we stood up. And again, I think that's really allowing us to get after stuff faster because the decision making has been pushed to that lower level. And we have people that are very tied into those mission areas who can say, yeah, I can get some capability here if I give up something else in this other area. And they don't have to do the mother may I all the way back up the chain. So there's a lot of advantages there as well. I'll also say that I've been doing this a while. I've been in and out of the acquisition field over many years. And the collaboration and cooperation that I'm seeing between all the different agencies is like it was never before. I think we used to have a lot more competition, and now we're seeing the collaborative conversations. SSC comes to the table with MDA, with NRO, Space RCO, the Space Development Agency, all the space acquisition entities. And we're talking about who's doing what. If we're overlapping, are we doing it intentionally? Are there gaps that we're creating? And if so, how are we going to get after those? So that's been a pretty significant shift as well, that I think has come about in the last few years, and definitely also being fueled by the Secretary, this Great Power Competition.
When I asked you about your overall responsibilities, you mentioned personnel. And so I wanted to ask what impact the Space Force Personnel Management Act has had on SSC's workforce, and also how you see your workforce evolving.
So the Personnel Management Act, right now we're not seeing a lot of impact. It just came in the last NDAA in December. What we anticipate, though, is that it is going to change how we actually leverage our part-time force. So the window just opened this month, actually, 2 weeks ago, to allow current Air Force Reserve personnel who want to come back to a full-time status to apply. They'll be aboard this upcoming fall. I'm a reservist. I have 8 years of active duty, almost 23 years now as a part-timer, and it has been an amazing opportunity for me. And I love what I'm seeing that our part-time folks are bringing to the fight. They are bringing some of that industry expertise. They're bringing different experiences. They're looking at what we're doing from a slightly different lens. They're bringing industry best practices. So I'm really hoping we can continue to leverage that. When we do move to this new structure with the Personnel Management Act, it is going to probably take a good generation for people to really understand how it's going to work and to no longer think of Air Force Reserve and how they operate when we talk about part-time resources. So it's going to be a pretty major shift. But again, I'm already excited about what we see people doing. We've had folks, an amazing number of folks step up as we've stood up Space Force and Space Systems Command. We saw it also with U.S. Space Command, where our reserve folks stood up to help these organizations get their feet underneath them. I think the opportunities, when I talk to full-time folks right now, they're pretty excited about this ability to maybe go part-time for a couple of years and then come back. But again, it's going to be a pretty major shift in mindset about how we approach this full and part-time status.
Oh, I didn't even think of that side of it, that the full-time people could change what they're doing and come back.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, there's a lot of really amazing opportunities. And we have, one of the things I'll brag real quick on Space Systems Command right now, we've got over 10 folks in full-time leadership type positions that are reservists. And again, I think they've brought to the command just a little bit of a different perspective. You know, they've either been defense contractors or they've done, you know, they worked for industry. We've got Amazon employees, folks that have worked at Google. So even if they aren't necessarily bringing the technical expertise from their civilian job, they are bringing that industry business best practices, which is again helping us to rethink how we do things. And I see that going forward.
So I want to turn to your background. I read that when you were in high school, you wanted to work in international business. What brought you from there to here?
I'll probably always regret throwing that out there. not
Oh,
actually.
really?
So I know I won't. I'm an interesting case, right? A lot of people start with a technical degree, and then as they get into it, they're like, yeah, this is not exactly what I thought I wanted to do. And then they'll go to maybe one of the social sciences or something along those lines. And I'm the unusual person that went the other way. So I did think I wanted to do international affairs, international business type of a degree. Applied to a lot of schools because that's the family I grew up in, was try a little bit of everything. Ended up getting into the Air Force Academy and thought, okay, this is great. I liked the structure. I liked the opportunities that looked like it would afford me, and it made sense to me that if I joined the military, I could probably do something internationally. Well, about a semester and a half in, I remembered I didn't like to write papers, and I was pretty good at math. And since every degree coming out of the Air Force Academy is a Bachelor of Science, to include the English degrees, everyone takes a good portion of the engineering courses. And so along the way, I was like, ooh, I think I like the mechanical engineering piece a little bit better than I like the political science. So I pivoted and now have a handful of technical degrees, and I've done that for the majority of my career.
Yeah, I think it's great to show people all the different ways people progress. It's not always linear.
Mm-hmm. I joke, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, right?
So you've been in the Air Force Reserves for more than 2 decades. I believe you said 23 years?
Yes, ma'am.
What kept you in the reserves?
It worked really well for my family at the time. So my husband is a few years older than I am. And so we hit a point where he was starting to need to PCS and move to new jobs faster than my timeline was. And it was getting pretty hard to do the joint spouse piece. So I made the decision to separate. And ironically, I actually separated on September 30th of 2001, which was a very challenging time to take off a uniform because you felt like you needed to go do something else. The nation was rallying after the 9/11 attacks. I did go to work for a defense contractor at the same time, and I was also able to get a part-time reserve job, so it allowed me to keep that uniform on as my husband continued to move and go through his career. And so I found it was a really neat opportunity for me to do some things that I may not have been exposed to on active duty. It allowed me to keep my foot in the door on the uniformed side of things. And then as opportunities came up, I discovered I could work in larger chunks of time here and there, but also take care of my family. So it really worked well for my life. And then I was blessed to have this opportunity to come back here in a full-time status and work as the deputy commander out here at SSC.
That's great. You've answered my questions. Was there anything else you wanted to say?
The biggest thing is I'm really blessed to have this opportunity. I'm very pleased and humbled to have been offered this chance. What SSC is doing as a field command and trying to get after the organized, train, and equip is a very different focus than they had before in acquisition. And I'm excited about what we're able to do to allow the really, really smart acquirers to go out and deliver capabilities to the warfighter.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Debra. I appreciate your time as well.